When the military builds something, it usually does so with a distinct objective in mind. Most of the world's military have similar standards for practicality and efficiency. When the purpose of what they built is served, it will likely become abandoned. That is why there are so many fascinating abandoned military structures and artifacts worldwide. Prime Minister Palmerston's Follies. Back in the 1860s, the British government was apprehensive about the threat posed by the increasing might of the French Navy. To deter the French from any intentions they might have about invading their neighbors across the water, Prime Minister Lord Palmerston ordered the construction of a series of large sea forts to guard the south coast of England. They took more than 20 years to build. The sea forts are the most expensive installations that the British had ever built during peacetime and are now known as Palmerston's Follies. The insulting name stems from the fact that the guns on the sea forts were obsolete by the time the work was complete, and the threat from the French vanished long before then. The most famous of Palmerston's Follies is simply known as No Man's Land and was used as a defense station during the First World War and an anti-aircraft gun base during the Second. It was declared obsolete, decommissioned in the 1950s, and sold by the military in 1963. By the 1990s, it was a luxury hotel with its own helipad, but the business failed and is now devoid of purpose. Wunsdorf Officers House, sometimes known as Wunsdorf Military Base, is in Sachsen, Germany. That begs the question of why it has the nickname Little Moscow, and that is a question with an interesting answer. A giant statue of Vladimir Lenin that stands between the grand buildings provides a clue to the tale. The first of the buildings was erected in 1871, when the Prussians decided they needed a shooting range. By the outbreak of the First World War, it was the largest military base in Europe. During the infamous Berlin Olympics of 1936, the officers' house served as the base of the German team. They shared the property with the 3rd Panzer Division, which did not move out when the athletes moved in. As the tide of the Second World War turned against the Nazis in 1945, they were forced to abandon the base. The Soviets seized it without firing a shot, and Marshal Georgy Zhukov decided he liked it so much that he would set up the headquarters of the Soviet High Command there. Locals were not allowed access. The property somehow stayed in Soviet hands for decades after the war, and it was not handed back to Germany until 1994. The Russian Woodpecker, Ukraine. The Duga radar was better known to millions of people all over Europe as the Russian Woodpecker. If your radio was disrupted by tapping noises during the 1970s and 1980s, this powerful facility in the Ivanovskaya district of Ukraine was probably the reason why. Those tapping sounds gave it the nickname the Woodpecker because of the distinctive noise they made. In reality, the Russian Woodpecker was an anti-ballistic missile early warning network that the Soviets felt they had to build out of necessity during the paranoia of the 1970s. The colossal lattice of steel is almost 500 feet high and over 1,700 feet long. Keeping it working required the labor of several hundred people. A secret town was built next to it and became home to a population of around 1,000. The existence of the facility somehow managed to remain a secret until the fall of the Soviet Union, after which the source of that radio interference finally became clear. By then, though, activity at the site had diminished significantly because of the disaster at nearby Chernobyl in 1987. The Alpine Wall. If you have ever visited the mountains of northern Italy, you might have wondered what all the strange pointy stone structures that dot the landscape are. These unusual-looking buildings have not been left by aliens, but they are fortresses, making up the Alpine Wall. Much like France's Maginot Line, the Alpine Wall was built before World War II, when the Italian government began to feel it might have to defend itself sometime soon amid quarrels with France, Austria, Switzerland, and Yugoslavia. The mountains offered a degree of natural protection already, but other lookout posts and fortresses were added at regular intervals for more than 1,000 miles, just to make sure. The bunkers of the Alpine Wall. The bunkers of the Alpine Wall are far from the only ones that remained standing long after their reason to exist had disappeared. There is also the bunker at Cape May Point, a well-known landmark if you live in New Jersey, USA. The bunker was built during the Second World War and has stayed on the beach while the world around it has changed. It is a testament to the skill of its builders that it has not collapsed already. The wooden pilings it was built atop have proven to be capable of bearing its immense weight, and the 7-foot-thick walls are not going to crumble anytime soon. Military structures of Hyuma in Tuvalu, Estonia. It takes a little more imagination to look at the various military structures in Hyuma in Tuvalu, Estonia. They were part former military installations and part war memorials. An almost identical set of broken down forts and forgotten military structures exist on the neighboring Estonian island of Saaremaa. Almost all structures are thought to have been built during the Second World War. There was no longer a need for defensive fortifications in Estonia after the war, so they were abandoned almost immediately. Unlike many former military bases, though, most of the important buildings were destroyed, leaving only the husks and foundations of fire towers, watchtowers, and garrisons. Most of them have been left untouched since the Soviets upped and left. In more recent years, the Annex radar base was converted to a military museum so that people could find out more about the military history of the islands. Mechanic Chase Military Training Grounds in Staffordshire, England. This location in England is regularly visited by tourists. Some of those tourists are interested in military history, but not all do. It is said that this old military training ground played a role in inspiring J.R.R. Tolkien to write Lord of the Rings. The author was stationed here during the First World War, while he recovered from the trench fever he contracted on the battlefield in France. It is a strange place, positioned in the middle of an area of stunning natural beauty, but was used as a huge military training base during both World Wars. So many troops were trained here during the wars that the facility had its own railway connection to the main line. During the First World War, the buildings here were also used to hold German prisoners. Very few of those buildings remain because, after the Second World War, they were taken apart so the materials could be used to build village halls in nearby Brockton. The British Channel Islands. During the Second World War, the Nazis seized control of the British Channel Islands. They hoped to use them as a platform to attack the British mainland, but were never successful. However, they extensively fortified and built on the islands while they were there. They built an underground hospital on the island of Guernsey. When we say they, we do not mean that the Nazis did the work themselves. Instead, they used slave labor. Work was ongoing inside the tunnels between 1940 and 1944, by which time over 20,000 square feet of tunnel space had been excavated. In the direst of situations, the enslaved people were expected to dig with their bare hands. Their work created an operating room, x-ray room, laboratory, and dispensary. It also created a lavish staff quarter, including a cinema for their captors. The hospital was at its busiest in summer 1944 when it was full of German casualties from the D-Day invasion. Fort of Graca in Elvas, Portugal. You will not find many military outposts that look like the Fort of Graca in Elvas, Portugal. Its distinctive star shape makes it almost unique, which makes it a shame that it has been allowed to go to rack and ruin the way it has. Construction work on the fort began in 1763 and took 29 years to complete. The shape allows for 3 separate defensive layers separated by ditches and thick walls. The star shape of the outer wall was designed to allow overlapping fields to fire from the cannon at the center of the fortress. That is also where you will find the structure known as the Governor's House, which is raised up from the rest of the base to allow its occupant a panoramic view. Based on the elaborate nature of the stonework and the lavish decorations, whoever stayed in the Governor's House lived a very comfortable life. Chemain de la Matour in Etso, France. Chemain de la Matour in Etso, France was carved straight into the side of the mountain when Louis XIV ran out of lumber and decided that a drastic solution was needed. Strengthening the French Navy was an obsession of the king throughout his long reign, so he ordered thousands of ships to be built, but quickly began to run out of wood from the Pyrenees. The second source of wood was identified in the pig forest, but it was difficult to access and transport materials from because of a ravine.